All right, let's just jump right into this explainer and see if we can uncover the absolutely fascinating 500 million-year-old mystery behind how human beings understand and navigate the physical world around us. Have you ever wondered why some people can just effortlessly pack a car trunk like they're playing a high-stakes game of Tetris, or look at a really complex map and instantly know where to go, while others completely struggle to assemble a basic piece of flat-pack furniture? Well, the answer actually isn't just about how much attention they paid in geometry class. It is a much, much older story, written deep in our DNA.
So, think about it. Why are our brains just, single, all-purpose hard drives? For over a century now, scientists have been studying human intelligence, and they consistently find that spatial ability stands entirely on its own. It's this dedicated, measurable domain that goes way beyond just general smarts. And what's really compelling here is that this specific spatial intelligence heavily predicts modern success in STEM fields, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
To figure out why this is, we're looking at a brilliant blueprint from researcher David C. Geary. He recently published this fascinating paper in the journal Intelligence that actually seeks to solve this puzzle by uniting two historically separate fields of science. For decades, researchers in these two areas have mostly just ignored each other. But Geary proposes that if we combine their insights, we can finally crack the code of human special abilities.
What we're doing is bridging a massive gap between the psychometricians and the evolutionary biologists. On one side, you've got modern data and exams, literally mapping out the architecture of human cognition through measurable test scores. On the other side, you have the ancient survival instincts of our ancestors. Evolutionary theory looks at our minds as a collection of cognitive modules, finely tuned over millennia to solve recurring problems of survival, something often referred to as folk physics.
Okay, so psychometrics cleanly breaks down this whole spatial ability thing into four really distinct quadrants, all based on how we mentally manipulate and navigate objects. If a task is intrinsic, it's about the object itself, like rotating a shape in your mind's eye or finding a specific figure hidden in a drawing. If it's extrinsic, it's about how objects relate to each other, like reading a map to navigate a landscape. It gives us a highly specific, scientific way to measure human performance.
Now, here's why this is absolutely crucial today. We're not just talking about getting a high score on some abstract IQ test. These are the exact traits that predict whether someone might effortlessly grasp really complex, newly introduced math concepts. Even when you control for general intelligence, strong spatial skills are a prime indicator of long-term accomplishments. I mean, we're talking about predicting who eventually files patents or publishes groundbreaking research in modern tech and science fields.
But here's the real question, right? How did we actually get these highly specialized spatial abilities in the first place? To understand why a modern kid is a total whiz at building blocks, or why a teenager suddenly gets a perfect score on the spatial sections of an SAT, we can't just look at their modern education. We literally have to travel back in time to hunt down the evolutionary culprits that built these systems into our biology.
Get this, more than 500 million years ago, an early version of the hippocampus evolved in ancient vertebrates, and its sole purpose? To create map-like representations of the physical world. It allowed early organisms to navigate their ecology, track prey, avoid predators, the whole shebang. We are literally carrying an evolutionarily conserved navigation system right inside our heads.
And we can see this exact thing playing out in the animal kingdom today. It's like a perfectly controlled evolutionary experiment proving that navigational abilities adapt directly to reproductive and survival needs. Take the meadow vole, for example. The males roam up to 5 times further than the females just to find dispersed mates. The result? They've developed far superior spatial maze memory. Now compare them to their closely related cousins, the monogamous prairie voles. There, males and females share the exact same territory size, and amazingly, they show absolutely zero sex differences in spatial ability. And it goes the other way too. It perfectly illustrates that whenever one sex engages with the physical ecology in a more complex way, their specific spatial hardware is naturally upgraded. Look at the female brown-headed cowbird. She's essentially a squatter who sneaks her eggs into other birds' nests. Because she has to remember all these hidden locations across the environment, her spatial memory and her actual hippocampus is significantly larger than the males of her own species.
Section 1. Human ancestors and survival pressures.
So, bringing this back to our own ancient past, ancestral men faced some seriously intense physical competition, and they hunted across vast distances, often 2 to 4 times further than women. And we actually still see this pattern today in modern hunter-gatherer societies like the Hadza in Tanzania. They also relied heavily on thrown projectile weapons, stones and spears. To survive these very specific, intense demands, evolutionary pressure massively upgraded their allocentric or bird's-eye view navigation, map generation, and extreme targeting skills.
And wild as it sounds, that ancient hunter-gatherer blueprint manifests directly in our modern psychometric tests. Today, roughly 3 out of 4 men are more accurate than the average woman at hitting a target, judging the velocity and trajectory of a moving object, and remarkably, even blocking incoming projectiles. It's an ancient reflex likely linked to dodging stones and spears in our deep past.
Now, on the flip side, the ancestral division of labor threw a completely different set of ecological demands at women. Their role was heavily focused on foraging and gathering. That meant navigating the local environment to find highly specific, stationary resources. This deep evolutionary pressure selected for incredible efficiency in foraging, and it hardwired a highly specialized, distinctly female advantage in what researchers call object location memory.
And here is where it gets really interesting. When researchers test people without actually warning them it's a memory test, this ancient gathering adaptation brilliantly comes to life. Right around puberty, roughly 7 out of 10 girls and women will recall far more specific spatial locations and local environmental details than the average male. It is quite literally the modern cognitive echo of ancestral foraging expertise. But, and this is a big but, genetics is really just the starting line here. We might be born with what researchers call evolutionary skeletal biases. For example, they've observed a slight intuitive advantage in mental rotation in boys as young as 5 months old. But cognitive maps, those are built through play. Girls' spatial abilities benefit just as powerfully from early spatial play, meaning that fully fleshing out these ancient biological blueprints requires active, physical exploration of the world for everyone.
So returning to David C. Geary, he notes, the approach is illustrated here for spatial abilities and provides a blueprint for linking psychometric and evolutionary approaches to the study of human spatial and other abilities. What this peace treaty between two highly distinct scientific fields shows us is that analyzing our evolutionary roots is the ultimate key to decoding modern psychometric test scores. We aren't just taking arbitrary geometry tests. We are exercising ancient survival muscles, adapted for tracking, hunting, gathering, and navigating our way through a very dangerous ancestral world.
So, what should you take away from this whole explainer? It's that our brains are quite literally living museums of our ancestors' survival. Every single time you read a map, merge onto a fast-moving highway, or easily recall exactly where you left your peas, you are standing on the shoulders of millions of years of evolutionary history. And it leaves us with an incredible question. If a 500-million-year-old instinct dictates how we pass today's math tests, what other ancient secrets are quietly guiding your daily habits right now?